So it depends. Like if you're going to use Jose Aldo to put over younger talent, it might not always go your way because even a slower Jose Aldo at this age is still pretty tough out. The fight itself, look, when you get past all the politics, I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a good fight. But we still don't. I'm still on the fence a little bit with Zahabi. I think he's a good fighter. I just want to see if he can maybe break that barrier and become something great.
Yeah, I think you meant Batista. That one didn't go his way. Martinez, he did beat in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
Dan, Tom, how about you, man? Are you excited about these matches? These matches are supposed to excite us, especially when it involves an Aldo and a Poirier and whoever else.
I know I'm the curmudgeon and gets crap. It's like, oh, I complain about the matchmaking, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. Miss me with the I'm trying to build up contender stuff. Didn't we try to do that with Frankie Edgar and Chris
Chris
Gutierrez, which
Gutierrez,
didn't make
yeah.
much sense? And what did they do with Chris Gutierrez? They buried him back on the prelims because they do that to bantamweight, they do that to flyweight, despite what Nolan said, and I back him about flyweight being awesome. It's undeniable that bantamweight is one of the most banging and best divisions in the sport, much less the UFC. Yet they're consistently disrespected. And even not even just the legends and building names. Let's just talk about this last card, Charles Johnson. He was one of the flyweight contenders of Nolan mentioning of people on winning streaks in that division. And they've all kind of taken losses. And the worst part about that is if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, if a flyweight fight is booked to open the prelims and no one's watching, guys, did it really exist? Did Charles Johnson's winning streak exist? Did it get extinguished? Who knows? Who cares? Because the UFC are burying these fights on crap cards. And even when they're on good cards or pay-per-views, they're throwing them down on the prelims. So miss me with all that. But I am happy for Aiemann Zahabi because even though my MMA junkie under the radar fighter, Steve Garcia there, dropped out of his fight for Barbosa, which could have kind of put a stamp on that. My honorable mentions have been doing well from Jazz Divisius to Aiemann Zahabi was also on that honorable mentions, a real nice guy. Met him doing some media stuff for TSN. He does that when he's not fighting. I could not root for Aiemann any harder, guys. But again, let's not pretend like Aiemann hasn't been around forever, only been fighting once a year. Now, all of a sudden, the UFC wants to get behind. Is that the case? Or are they just in Canada with another card to fill and they're just throwing darts at the wall because there's no more middleweights to rematch? There's my rant.
I got to address one in the chat. This is a comment more, but I guess there is a question in there. Joseph Boza strikes again. He says, if I remember right, Jose fought Mark Hominick at UFC 129 and no one complained. I can just stop right there. He was the #1 contender. I remember he had a win streak going in. That's why no one complained. I mean, you're going to go back 12, 15 years. I've been around, baby. Why would someone complain about that? And now he goes on, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, no one complained because Hominick had earned that shot.
The original machine.
Yeah. Who do you like in this fight, Nolan King? Are you taking Zahabi, you taking Aldo, just upon your first instinct, your reaction?
Yeah, I'm going to lean with Aldo. I think Zahabi has slowly climbed. Obviously, like Dan said, he fights kind of once a year, but he's found some consistency recently. It's nice to see him get in there. Granted, he is 37 years old, but he's not that old in fight years. So I think he's still got, he's kind of in his prime, right? But I think Aldo stylistically still should beat him. I think now the blueprint is there, right, of how these guys are going to try to beat Aldo, unfortunately, which is what we saw Merab do and what we saw Batista do. Make it ugly, get booed. If it gets you the win and an extra check, who really cares, right? So I don't know if Zahabi will implement that game plan. He doesn't necessarily, I'd have to go back. I'm sure Dan maybe could speak to it more about his past fights, but I don't think that jumps out as something that I think he could really excel at. But who knows? I mean, maybe he'll for us and them we'll work on something there. But I am going to lean with Jose Aldo. I think the King of Rio will send them home unhappy in Montreal. Which, as a Bruins fan, you really hate to see those fans leave the Bell Center with frowns on their face. But